This video is going to continue to work on exponent rules. So remember from the last video, we talked about how exponents are a quick way of writing multiplication. So if we have 3 to the 5th, that really means 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Just like x to the 4th means x times x times x times x. So people often get confused once negatives come in with these. So for example, if I had negative 2 squared, remember that means negative 2 times negative 2. So the answer here would end up being 4. Now, if you try to do negative 2 squared in your calculator, and the only things you push are negative, then the 2, and then either the squared button, or a lot of calculators have this little caret symbol, or they have an x to the y symbol. There's all different symbols. So whatever button you press to get an exponent, and then you write 2, you would get, and then you press 2, you would get an answer that says negative 4. And you're like, wait a minute, the answer is not negative 4. So you need to remember that when you put this into your calculator, you need to You need to put everything you're trying to raise to a power is what needs to go into a set of parentheses. So you would need to type on your calculator a parenthesis there and a parenthesis there. So that's just a little note if you're using a calculator. Because of that same thing, people sometimes see this, negative 2 squared, and again, they think the answer is 4. But here, this 2, it's only attached to this 2. It's not attached to the negative here, because that negative is not in parentheses like it was up here. So in this case, this would be negative, and then the thing that's repeating is just the 2, so 2 times 2. So this would be negative 4. So sometimes you might have something like this, like negative 3 cubed. So this would be negative, and now it's the negative 3 that's being repeated. So negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. So 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And then I have negative times negative is positive, times negative is negative, times another negative is a positive. So this answer would be a positive 27. And again, the reason it's positive is because negative times negative is positive, times another negative is negative, times another negative is positive. You can also apply the exponent rules to fractions. So if you had something like 3/4 squared, so remember that's 3/4 times 3/4. And so remember when we multiply fractions, we multiply across the top, we multiply across the bottom. So in this case, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16. You also could have gotten there by thinking about distributing the negative, or not the negative, the exponent to the top number and to the bottom number. So we could have gotten there instead by saying this becomes 3 squared divided by 4 squared. And 3 squared is 9, and 4 squared is 16. So just because you have a fraction, don't get super scared. It works the exact same way. For instance, if I had negative 1/5 cubed, this would be the first negative is this negative here. So I'm just carrying it over. Then I've got negative 1/5 times negative 1/5 times negative 1/5. So negative times negative is positive, times negative is negative, times negative is positive. So my final answer is going to be positive. 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. And 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. So the answer here is positive 125. Let's see. So same thing works too with x's. So if you had x over 2 cubed, that would mean x over 2 times x over 2 times x over 2, or x times x is x to the third, right? There's 3 of them being multiplied together, and 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. So on the bottom you'd have an 8. And again, you can get to it by just distributing that exponent. So this would be x cubed divided by 2 cubed. So I took the 3 and I put it to the x, and I put it to the 2. And if I do that, there's nothing more to do on the top. It just stays as an x cubed, but 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2, or 8. So you get the same answer, whether you distribute that exponent or you rewrite the stuff that number of times inside. So no matter what, you still get that same thing going on there for you. So you want to be careful when you have negatives, whether or not the negative is in the parentheses. It's only going to repeat if it's in the parentheses. So it's only going to repeat if it was something like, negative 4 cubed, right? That would be negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. And so negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. Okay? So you can think about these two here. This gives me a positive 16, and then I still have that times negative 4. And if I do that, positive 16 or times negative 4 would give me negative 64. And again, that's going to be different than if I had negative 4 cubed. So negative 4 cubed is going to be, the negative just stays, and then 4 times 4 times 4, because that's the only thing that repeats. And we just saw 3 4s multiplied together, 64. So this answer is also negative 64, but for a completely different reason. And if I had negative 4 cubed, you would have negative, and then you'd have negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. So you'd have negative times that negative 64, or a positive 64. So you want to be careful with the negatives as you're going through them to make sure that you're putting them in the appropriate places.